Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of lies spinning from their mouths. Stop looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. But no one wants to talk about it. It's safer not to talk about it. I cut my strings, no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
I'm just not there.
Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. It is Wednesday, August the 17th, 2022. I've got Tim here, joining me by, the old Bill Gates space magic. My name is Cliff. We're coming to you live from Carter County, Tennessee. We're going to go through some news stories here about a variety of issues. We kind of get a theme coming together by the end of these. How's it going, Tim?
Whoop whoop.
Got Dalton in the
Let
chat.
me get my pin to the music stand, and
All
I'll be
right.
good to go.
Dalton says the geese gassers strike again. That's right. Those geese gassers in Johnson City. If you've been with us long enough, you probably know what we're talking about. If you don't, well, if you've not, you may just have to wonder for a while what we're talking about.
Was it Johnson
Yeah, it was
City?
in Johnson City. It was actually a local neighborhood in Johnson City. I'll go ahead and tell you since Tim brought it up. There was a local neighborhood in Johnson City that had a plan and had obtained a permit to gas some Canada geese that were on their lake in the community, and word got out to the surrounding community, and they changed their minds in a hurry on that one and decided not to capture and gas the geese. So if you ever see that on one of our streams, you are now part of the inside joke.
I don't know. Maybe are you pro gassing the geese?
Not particularly, no. No.
Not pro. Okay.
No,
Geese.
I'm
Goose.
good. Yeah, geese are assholes, but if you don't run from them, they won't chase
I'm
you.
not pro. I'm not pro gassing the goose. I just think it's
No,
funny.
it's fun to talk about, but that's about it. I'm glad they didn't do it. What you drinking on there? Some Dr. Enough?
You got to consider also something that we've never brought up that we could do as a local topic is does it really surprise you when the local neighborhood in Johnson City considered
Not
gassing
particularly.
geese when they're like 30-minute, well, not even like a 15-minute drive away from Jonesboro, which once upon a time actually did
That
hang
was
an
Irwin,
elephant.
and yes, they did. And
Yeah.
I mean, really, that was an unfortunate story. We'll have to do that story because you got to really go through the whole story to do it justice. There's a lot of different angles on it and a lot of different perspectives, and we don't have time to get into that tonight. But that would be an excellent local story for us to get into, is the story of Mary the elephant who was hung in Irwin. So yeah, let's do that. And we might do that for our local segment this weekend. I think that'd be good. It's not exactly a feel-good story, but it is a pretty interesting part of this area's local history. We do have a few local stories I want to get into tonight, but I'm going to start off. This one is pretty interesting. It's actually happened in Knoxville, Tennessee. There was an Austin East High School shooting there, and that was actually the officers went into the school and ended up shooting a 17-year-old kid who died. And they were found to have, to have been a justified shooting and be a author, the right use of force or whatever. But I wanted to go through a couple of interesting things in this story here. This shooting actually took place on, and this is from WJHL.com. The shooting took place on April 12th, 2021, and they responded of a report to a male subject who was armed in the school and fatally shot him while attempting to disarm him in the school bathroom. Apparently, his gun discharged during the struggle and struck a trash can, and Officer Jonathan Clabo then fired his service weapon twice, once fatally striking Thompson, and the other striking Officer Adam Wilson in the leg. So one of the two shots he fired actually hit another officer during this. And you see that in so many cases, I mean, I realize that everybody's tense and things are going on to struggle, but as soon as one of those guns goes off, you'll see that a lot. An officer will just start kind of shooting everywhere. But as I go on down this story, I find a little bit more. It says only one of the officers was in the incident was reprimanded for his actions, and it was Adam Wilson who got shot, and he didn't turn on his body cam before the incident, which is mandated by their policy there. But here's where we get into one of the things that I thought was pretty interesting, because they asked, there was two questions that we're talking about Chief Paul Noel, and he's got these two questions that he's received that he thinks are important. He wants to clear up. He says the first is, why was crisis negotiators not used? And he says there are several reasons why crisis negotiators would not have been useful in that situation. One reason was there was no prior contact to Anthony Thompson Jr., and our officers were not even certain he was in the bathroom prior to going in and looking for him. Two, officers had no reason to believe that he was armed inside the school, and no reason to believe that Anthony was aware that the officers were looking for him at this time. Based on these circumstances, it did not meet the criteria for involving crisis negotiators. Does anything stand out about that to you as interesting, Tim, as far as when you're going to apprehend a 17-year-old student who's suspected of being armed? Did you catch anything there that stuck out to you like I did?
Maybe, but go ahead and highlight.
Well, I felt like they said they were there for a report of a student armed on the school, but then they go right in to say that crisis negotiator would not have been used because they had no reason to believe that he was armed inside the school, and he had no idea, no reason to believe that he was aware that the officers were looking for him at the time. So basically,
so were they saying that they were sending cops to go get him because he was suspected, but they didn't send a particular kind of cop with him because they didn't think he was going to act out that particular
well, they said
day?
they didn't think he was armed at the time.
Yeah, they were gonna go talk to him anyway. They just didn't think he was gonna have a gun on him that day.
I think
Is that
that's what they
correct?
say. Yeah, I think that's my understanding of it. So I'm just kind of curious yet again. What it's another one of those scenarios where it's like when you corner a person and they have the means to fight back, they're a lot of times going to fight back, whether that's in their best interest or
Right.
not. Um,
Well,
if it's an emergency situation, yeah, then they need to go get him. But they have to be aware that probably the best way to do it, if he's not actively endangering somebody at the time, is to wait on him to come out and catch him then. But um, did they think he had a gun or did they not? Because we get mixed signals from there. That's the point that I'm looking at.
it, just from what I read, the way I interpreted it was they thought he was dangerous, and so they were going to go talk to him at school. Maybe wait till school's over. Uh, but then when they approached him, he was armed, and their excuse was, "Well, we didn't think he'd actually be armed." I don't
Yeah,
know.
I just think
That's
that's kind of strange. And it says in a matter of seconds they saw the gun in Anthony's pocket and heard a firearm. Um, so did he pull it out? Did they just see it? How did the gun come out and fire? I just think there's a lot of questions here that remain to be answered, and I'm not, they did stop a student from. I mean, the student didn't hurt anybody with his firearm, but he's dead now, and he is under 18 years old. Um, so
Do they? Where did he have a gun at? Where
he
is
was
that?
in school. Um,
I mean, like what?
I'm
Is
sorry.
that?
Oh, it
What
was in
state?
Knoxville, in Tennessee.
So it's in Tennessee, in Knoxville. But man, like they have metal detectors at Elizabeth. Like this is a pretty podunk town. Why? How does a school and not? I'm just wondering. Like, I mean, we got like a bubble we live in, I guess, on some level. I guess for me to be naive enough to think that there's schools out there that don't have guns in them. I guess, but
I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot of questions that remain to be answered. Not trying to say the officers did anything improper because I really don't know. But there's some,
well, isn't that exactly what everybody? I mean, like, aren't we arguing the reverse now? Like, because once upon a time, when there was a guy with a gun in a school and the officers didn't gun him down, everybody, the entire nation sat back in horror as they did nothing. And now all of a sudden, we find a kid with a gun in the school. Wouldn't you immediately shoot them because you're not going to be
well,
that
that's
coward
that's what I'm
that everybody?
saying. It's a tough situation because these officers really don't know. They don't know what they're walking into, and we've got all these stories of these school shootings, and whatever the truth is, that's what we'd like to know. I mean, I think most people can understand if these guys are on edge. They think a guy might have a gun in there. They might do something, might be a little bit jumpy and mess up. But it just seems like they leave a lot of stuff unanswered in this. It's supposed to be, answering all our questions about the investigation and stuff. Because like it's, did the kid get the gun out? How did they know the kid had a gun in the pocket? I mean, they just kind of glance over that, and that just seems like important stuff, especially when the kid's dead, to look into and find out exactly what happened there. Again, that's you make a good point, um, with the given events in the different schools and stuff. So um, my main thing is just to point this out and say, hey, I feel like there's some stuff that doesn't quite get answered in this. So um, they did find the school that it was justified. I mean, the kid had a gun, so um,
Well, that's kind of the only thing. Like, it's kind of the only point that I was going to make is like if and I'm just
yeah,
as an observer, like it seems like a couple of weeks ago we were upset because there wasn't enough people shooting at a person that had a gun in the school. And now it kind of seems like they're flipping, saying, "Wait a second, why did they shoot this guy that had a gun in the school so quickly?"
yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm just saying, as a third party looking on, if I was a cop in a school and I saw the way these police officers' careers and lives were basically ended because they were
Hmm.
cowards or whatever, however you want to word that, I might be a little trigger happy when I found out that was something.
Well, this did happen in 2021, but I think your point remains valid.
Okay. Well, I thought this was a more
No,
current
but I
thing.
mean, it's the investigation that's come out today. But I just thought it was kind of curious that, you know,
But it's important than everything I brought up,
well,
though.
I mean, it still does apply, because it's not like the one that that we just had recently is the only time that's happened. You know, it's been in the news a lot, and I mean, it looks like they did respond the best way they could. I'm just curious of how we just get glanced over right here. Is they 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 have no reason to suspect that he was armed, but they were there for an armed student, right? I thought that was strange. And then it just says it glances over everything and says, in a matter of seconds, officers saw the gun in Anthony's pocket and heard a firearm. And then the officer ended up shooting his buddy and shooting the kid. Um, I don't know. It's kind of like one of those. Um, you know, did they accidentally do it and then be like the Dave Chappelle thing? Just sprinkle some crack on him. You know what I mean? Um, I don't know.
I mean, like, he had a gun.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm
like,
saying though.
maybe they were trigger happy. That's all. That's all I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting that if he didn't have a gun. I only suggest the way I read it is they thought maybe he was a one of those kids that looked like he was acting kind of creepy. And then when they got there, they were like, "Oh shit, he actually is one of those creepy kids. He has a gun,"
Yeah,
and they shot him.
yeah, it
You
could
know,
be as simple as that.
everyone has those creepy kids, and I mean, there's plenty of
Yeah,
those creepy kids that never do anything. They really are just acting out because they have a garbage life and they don't know how to respond any
yeah.
other way. And then there are those other kids that you think, that they're not kidding. They've got a hit list, and one of these days they plan on acting on
Well,
it. So I've never wanted to be a cop. I've never gotten involved in law enforcement. Um, so it's really hard for me to determine how I would act in a situation where I'm supposed to protect children but not kill someone at the
right.
same time. It's
Well,
a weird one.
let
So
me
that's
tell you.
why.
Let me move on to the other point I wanted to bring up on this one. It says, in a matter of seconds. Now, this is why they didn't render aid to the boy, and it was because there apparently was a delay. And he says this is a far more complicated issue. The chief does. He says the officers took the measures necessary during the chaotic situation. In a matter of seconds, officers saw the gun in Anthony's pocket and heard a firearm. Officer Baldwin actually believed he had been shot when he felt the percussion from the discharge of the firearm. Then two more shots rang out in a small and compact bathroom. One of the officers was shot, and almost simultaneously, another individual emerges from a stall and grabbed Officer Claybow's shoulder. Our officers had no idea where Anthony's gun was or if it still could be used. The most pressing matter was to make sure the scene was safe, and once it was rendered safe, medical assistance was requested. This all happened in a matter of seconds. And they say they're going to improve how their internal affairs process works and speed up the investigations and stuff. But I just thought that was a couple of curious things for that to be a year out, and those seems like, I don't know, it just seems like that's something that news would ask a little more thorough. Not to, but it just leaves it open ended for a lot of questions there, as far as whether they acted improperly or what might have actually happened with. I mean, a gun just doesn't go off usually in a pocket unless somebody grabs for it, but they never say that the kid grabbed for it. So that's all I'm saying is I would like to have a little more information on that, especially after a year-long investigation. And these.
I'm probably gonna forget about it after we get done talking.
What's that? Yep.
I said you said you'd like to have more information on that. I said I'll be honest. I'm probably going to forget about the whole story here in
Right.
about 20 minutes.
Well, I'd say you're probably not the only one. Let's see. I got another one here about the deer. The Virginia wildlife officials warn about deer spreading disease in Virginia. So if you're in Virginia, keep an eye out for these deer that have that deer or you'll see a nearly dead lying on cool, wet soil during the late summer, early fall, or deer floating on water, and they've got hemorrhagic disease apparently. And so if they lie on cool, wet soil, you'll think maybe they're trying to cool off. The disease is no threat to humans or domestic pets or anything, but you shouldn't consume any deer that looks like it may have hemorrhagic disease. Apparently that's going around here. So if you see a big bloated deer when you're killing your road, when you're collecting your roadkill, don't eat it. And I don't know, is it legal to eat roadkill and collect roadkill in Virginia? I know it is in Tennessee.
I don't remember. I know there's a day limit on
Is
it, but like, so you can tell when you shouldn't be collecting all that stuff anyway because it starts
Yeah.
to bloat. It does get fat and stiff and start to decompose. So anybody that doesn't live out here in the wild, I guess we're just used to seeing dead animals because we have so many deer. You know, we have dead deer on the road everywhere, and that's with the abundance
Oh
of
yeah,
hunting. So I could only be like if everybody decided they didn't want to hunt deer anymore.
Well, hell, we put roads through the
Like
forest.
if you didn't have hunters, you'd have to have like your cars look like bumper cars because they'd be running into your vehicle so much. I've been hit 3 times, well, no, twice by a deer, and it's never been like front. It's always been like it running into like my back quarter panel or something. So it's like you can't even brake in time with stupid
I've
stuff
lost
like
count of
that.
how many times I've run into or had a deer run into me in cars. It's been several. I've had one that was, you know, a bad one, where it actually, you know, ruined my car. Most of the time that's been pretty easy. Haven't had too bad of luck with that except for the one time. But then,
So I mean, is the disease killing the deer, or is it just saying that these deer that just stand beside the road bloated? I mean, I don't know of anybody that would want to pick up a
yeah, I know that was a joke. No, it's talking about if you see them like lying around on the cool soil and they're just kind of laying there and they're not dead, you shouldn't eat those, or if you know. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So just be aware of it and don't eat crazy looking deer. Pretty much. No, I was joking about that. I didn't figure you'd. I mean, some people I know do pick them up, but
yeah, meat's more tender or some weird joke.
Yeah, they say it ruins it if you get hit. Okay, here's our next look. This is a kind of a local story here. This is from, or no, this one's from Pennsylvania. Sorry.
Spill the tea.
Hey, Spill the Tea. Thanks for joining us. We got 2 former Pennsylvania judges. They orchestrated a scheme to send children to for-profit jails in exchange for kickbacks, and they were ordered to pay more than $200 million to hundreds of people they victimized in one of the worst judicial scandals in U.S. history. But listen, you know, these guys got caught. This started, I think, back in 2007, and they're just now getting some kind of justice from these guys. And what I know is this is actually a pretty common thing to have local jurisdictions where they will have, say, a drug rehab program, and they'll sentence people to this drug rehab program as part of their probation. And maybe the judge's, you know, relative or somebody like this actually owns it, or somehow they get a kickback from it. And this happens a lot. This is not an isolated incident by any means. And these are supposed to be the people who uphold law and order. So that's one of the reasons that I feel like we really need to have these questions asked and answered in the stuff like this when the police do their thing, because we see evidence all the time of, even all the way at the top, corruption taking over and people getting money and kickbacks and covering up things. And again, there's times where they don't act. I think the boy's mother in the story there from Knoxville on the shooting, she said, you know, that the guy even the officer stepped over the kid who was dying there to go wash his hands off, and rather than render aid to the child, of course, who did have a gun, but again, in something like that, we got to have all those questions answered. And when we see things like this with the judges engaged in this sort of behavior, we know there's corrupt judges, we know there's corrupt cops. So we really need to have, you know, access to, not me personally, but the public needs to have access to body cam footage, and they need to know, they need to have they don't not glance over a lot of these important details, so we can make sure we hold these people accountable. You know, if they were just doing their job, great. I'm glad they did and didn't hurt anybody. But again, if they need to have public access to some of this stuff so we can make sure, because there's just too many cases of corruption where people don't get caught, or, you know, people do get caught in some of them, but think about how many that we never hear of.
I do think you're putting them in a tough position in that one case.
Yeah, maybe I am. I just feel like we need more answers. I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to say that they did anything wrong. I just say with so many stories of corruption and so many, bad stories. If everything's on the up and up, they ought to really put a little more details about it than that.
Well, like I guess first of all, it's the news. The news sucks. So I don't necessarily know if it's the law enforcement's problem because the people that went to journalist school don't know how to write for some reason. They don't know how to tell a story. That's one of the reasons that journalism. I know maybe that sounds arbitrary. You're supposed to report the
No.
facts. It's like, well, there's a narrative that you need to tell. That you can tell a narrative without spinning it. And if you just don't include any facts and it sounds, made up as you went, like some kind of soap opera, then that just means you didn't do your
I
job
guess
right.
maybe I should be harder on the press. I guess I gave a little bit of, the press a little bit of a hard time for not answering. I'm just thinking if they told me this about, okay, there's suddenly this gun in this guy's pocket, I'm going to say as a journalist, okay, did he reach into his pocket? Did he produce it? Did you see it through the pocket? What are we talking about here? And that stuff's just not put in there. So maybe I should be harder on the press in this situation than on the officers. But either way, the
it's information.
it's important information that needs to be put out there so that if everything is on the up and up, we can see it and we don't wonder. There.
I think I guess my concern. I won't say fear because it's not a fear. My concern is it's almost like a new version of outrage culture. Do you remember that? Maybe that's still going on. I don't know. Maybe the rock I live under has just been so peaceful that I didn't know. I know if outrage culture is still going on, but like I think it's you put the culture, the society, whatever you want to call it, in a real strenuous position where every single time an event happens, like we're all required to suddenly become independent journalists to try to get answers, because I feel like that's where like a lot of really deranged conspiracy theories come from, is this it's like the idea that the story's never cut and dry. It's like there's always has to be some secret angle, and we get addicted
That's
to that
true.
mindset that maybe there's some other.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And, I'm not saying maybe hypothetically speaking, these are awful cops and they shot an innocent kid. I have no idea. Until you showed me that article, I wasn't even familiar with it. Like I said, I didn't even know what the date was, so I obviously was very misinformed. But I do think it's a very hard way to give officers. You put officers in a really hard position when 1 week you're saying the whole nation's saying, not just you. If there's someone with a gun in the school, you should take them out because that's you need to protect kids and stuff. And then you kind of retcon it and say, well, we need to figure out, did the kid have the gun?
I guess the difference is if you get him where they're actively using it to harm people, and one where he's in the bathroom and they're apprehending him at the time, and they got a little jumpy, it sounds like. But again, if it happens, fine. I mean, nobody's perfect, but it'd just be good to have enough information to really understand the situation and not feel like they're trying to hide something, because maybe there was something in there that didn't make them look perfect. Well, nobody's perfect. Nobody expects them to be perfect, but it would just be good to have the information out there. And if it's something that needs to be scrutinized further, fine, but at least put it out there. Let's move on because I got a lot of things I want to hit tonight, and I don't want to get stuck on these too long. But we got National Transportation Safety Board co-pilot who jumped from plane in North Carolina upset about hard landing. This is from WCYB. Apparently, this guy was doing parachute jumps and went to land and like tagged the landing gear and had to, they had to take off and try again. And the guy gets upset, just gets up out of the co-pilot seat and says he's getting sick and opens up the ramp out the back and just jumps out of the plane while it's in the air and lands in somebody's backyard and dies. This happened over in near Raleigh, so pretty close to here. That's just a strange story. He's so upset over damaging the landing gear that he jumps out of the plane. I don't know. Had to be something else going on, but either way, that guy,
I wonder if he had I know this sounds weird. I wonder if he maybe had like a brain spell with altitude changes.
They didn't mention that in the article, but I guess it's possible.
The only reason that comes up is there was an article that they ended up making an episode of CSI about. I can't remember if the article is. I don't know if it was identical with the article, but in the case of the one in CSI, the guy had a brain swell because of I guess the altitude change. I don't know what, but it started to make him act super super erratic, and people didn't know how to interpret what was wrong with him, so they essentially beat him to death to protect themselves. Because at one point he was trying to open the door to the side of the plane, and people were afraid they were
Oh
going to get
yeah,
sucked
I
out and
remember
stuff.
that.
Yeah, so how else do you explain the co-pilot being like, "How dare you land so hard? You get up and then just jump out of the plane unless there's something very
Yeah,
wrong
well,
with you."
apparently he was the co-pilot was the one who had damaged it, I think. But either way, yeah, something strange going on there. But yeah, I don't want to stick on that too long. But since that was pretty,
Was the one and he landed it too hard,
it says
or what?
he became visibly upset about a hard landing, and he said he opened his side cockpit window and may have gotten sick, and then he lowered the ramp in the back of the airplane, indicating he felt like he was going to be sick and needed air, and then he just got up, removed his headset, and it said apologized and departed the airplane via the ramp door. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he freaked out over the hard landing. I don't know, but
How high were they?
it doesn't actually put in there. It just said that he didn't have a parachute, and that he landed in the backyard of a town. But yeah, strange thing. But let's get.
Yeah, that's a wild story.
What's that?
Said, yeah, that's a wild story. That's the kind of story, and maybe it's just because I'm less socially conscious than you. But that's the kind of story I hear that I'm like, I want some more
Yeah.
details because that's interesting. Why in the
Yeah,
world would you do
there's
that?
not a lot more onto it. That's what I thought too. I thought because he was upset that he had damaged the landing craft. I don't know. But let's move on to this story from the New York Post. This I came across on Twitter, and I'll show you this. Here's the image that was posted on Twitter. This man holding a baby, and it said, "I met my wife when she was a baby." Or let's see, let me read it again. "I met my wife when she was a baby. Now she was pregnant with our child." And of course, you know what people's natural instinct on that is. Um, you're going to think, well, this is weird. Is this guy? I actually posted on Twitter when I saw that. If only there were a word that you could use to describe this sort of behavior without getting the boot from big tech. Obviously, meaning the G word that shall not be uttered. But then you go into the story, and it shows that she's 29 years old. He's 48. They met working at a bar. They did not know when they met that he had met her when she was a baby and he is 19, and that this is actually not his picture. So to me, it's almost like they I don't know who they is, but it's almost like somebody wanted you. I guess the New York Post wanted action, traction on the story. But it's like they wanted you to share it and say, "Look how gross this is," and have people argue it and say, "Well, actually, if you read the story, he didn't actually meet her when he didn't know her when she was 19. That's not him in the store in the picture." And basically started an argument where people are making excuses for, how this is okay for somebody to meet a baby when he was 19 years old, and then however many years, 29 years later, they run into one
The
another
issue.
without knowing one another, and um, later find out that he met her as a baby. So really, it's not. You wouldn't. That's not. I mean, for a 29-year-old and to meet a 48-year-old, and they get married and stuff, that's really not a big deal. And then they find out later that he knew her mother when she was a baby. But that kind of makes it like it's almost like they're gaslighting people into saying this is gross. You're doing something you shouldn't be with this girl.
Okay.
Do what?
Are they
Well, with
though?
by showing
Because
this
like,
picture, people are getting this idea though, because if you go on the Twitter and you
I
look at
think
the
I think you're reading it incorrectly though, because you're looking at it and saying that's gross if that's what they're saying. And if we're going to go with whatever kind of culture that has been raged against over the years, are you sure they're not saying that the word I'm not allowed to say,
yeah,
uber gray? Like maybe they're not trying to support that, but hey, they bonded. Like they kind of had like a weird little thing in Twilight where one of the werewolves bonded with a girl, and he was going to have to wait like 17 years to be with her. because like they imprint or some kind of weird. I guess that's like whatever Twilight rumor gray would be. I know I'm not speaking
Yeah,
proper
yeah,
pig Latin there, but I've heard that age restrictor video if you
yeah.
say the G word.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I've never seen Twilight, but something like that where he marked her and set her up. If that's what happened, then that might be different. But I don't think that's what happened here. But by posting that story, with the headline they did, and with this picture, as if this is the man she's marrying, and he's holding her as a baby. That's the picture they're showing with it. It's almost like
Yeah.
they're being intentionally inflammatory to try to get people, talking about it. And but then I look over and I see another story from the New York Post where it says couples with a 47-year age gap slams critics. It's right for us, and these people are like 27 and 74. Now obviously they can do whatever they want too. But I think it's
I
pretty
mean,
odd that both of those are shared on the same day, and with the way that they shared that. I think they're trying to have people react to as if it's inappropriate, and the only way you'll know it's not inappropriate is to read the story. To maybe start arguments. T says, strange indeed, but not inappropriate. Yeah, and you wouldn't think anything about it if not for the way that they posted the headline and then showed that picture. You wouldn't think there was anything wrong with. I wouldn't anyway. I mean, I'd say, well, he must have a lot of money or something like that. If you see a 48-year-old man and 29-year-old woman, that's about as much as far as you'd go with it. But I don't know. It just seems like kind of strange that they would frame it that way, show a picture to make it look like he was holding her when she was a baby, and the name of the article is titled. It is titled. Sorry, let me find it here. I met my wife when she was a baby. Now she's pregnant with our child. So doesn't it sound like they're trying to make it sound like there's something going on there when there's really not? Or is that just me?
yes, but at the same time, think, um, I think you're because you don't, are you the typical demographic for the Washington, was it Post?
No, that was New York Post, but
So you're not the typical
New York
demographic for
Post is
them
a
though,
pretty
right?
like mainstream conservative, I guess, or mainstream Republican newspaper.
Okay, and it came from
Came
Fox
from
News.
no, it
Is
came
that
from
what
New
you're saying?
York Post. I mean, basically,
I'm saying so. The New York Post is more right
yeah,
leaning, though,
yeah.
right? So is
They're
that what
probably
you're
like moderate Republican leaning.
saying? So I mean, are they just looking for stories about the
I mean,
G word?
that's
Is
what
that
it
what you're
makes it look like. Is like they're finding something that's not that and making it sound like it is about that.
Okay, well, I mean, that just seems
But
okay.
that I think that's strange.
Are they trying to make it like they're normalizing
And
it, because I mean, like they don't have to make up stories if that's what they
that's what
think.
I'm
And I
saying. And
mean,
then here's this other one on the same day. Couple with 7-year age gap slams critic. It's right for us. And it is almost like they're normalizing, giving you examples of
okay.
how big age gap
Well,
relationships can be okay and not inappropriate.
what about this one? Is this one Republican or Democrat?
Uh,
The
what do
second.
you mean? This is from New York Post also. That's why I thought that was interesting because both of those stories are from the New York Post.
So the New York Post in the same day put up two articles about people with large age
Yeah,
gaps.
and in the current
Um,
climate, I mean, that wouldn't always be interesting, but I felt like with everything going on in the news lately regarding to the G word and stuff, and how you've got some groups that are trying to take up for that sort of behavior in certain ways, and it's almost like somebody's giving you an example of how there can be a large age gap without it being the G word.
I mean, the only way I can say it is that I mean I play out a lot, so I see a lot of crowds, and we live in a red state, so we would be the demographic. And the only way I could say that is that there are a lot of like older dudes dating younger girls and older women dating
Yeah,
younger guys. So there does seem to be like I guess there seems to be a separation of where like the generations don't want to date themselves. So it's like women my age and older are dating young guys who don't want to date
yeah.
girls their age because they consider those girls, I don't know what they find wrong with them, And then there's a bunch of dudes my age and older dating those girls because those girls aren't dating those guys. So, I mean, I have noticed that.
Well, I've seen some
It's,
discussion that
it,
a lot of the high status young women, like early 20s.
it's not high status. It's all like it's trailer park girls are dating
Mm.
older guys, is what I'm saying, and the reverse where you've got this. My theory would be that the people that are dating like the Zers and the young millennials aren't getting along with the opposite sex of that generation because I don't know. You want to be conspiratorial. We've been playing girls versus boys since the '80s. We've been trained to hate each other, so maybe we just can't stand each other. Whereas, you know, 50-year-old women and down, even above that, those women, I'm not trying to be sexist or anything, but they had to put up with way saltier dudes than millennials and young Z boys. So maybe when they see these young, sexy Gen Z guys with their boggins or whatever they're wearing and their vape pens, maybe that's just attractive for some of these cougars.
I tend to think it's more
And
with the rise of online dating and people, uh,
well, yeah, but
particularly
like I really just don't.
if you want to find someone who's already established, particularly as a young woman, but with young men too, you find somebody
You're
who's
being,
already established.
yeah, I think you're reading too deep into it as far as like if you want to be baser about it, like yeah, like physical attraction and stuff like that. I'm
No, I'm
saying
saying
like
like if you want a man who's got a car and a house and can take you on vacation and stuff like this, and you're a young woman, then you're probably going to be more likely to find that in an older man who's always going to be looking for a
that's
younger
all,
woman.
okay,
And then the same thing with the
that's
younger
all,
man. What's that?
that's always been
Well,
the
right,
case though.
but now
It's
you've
always
got
been
dating apps to take more of those young women, out of the dating pool for the younger men because they have immediate access to any man. Imagine you're a celebrity, right? And you've got a profile on Instagram or whatever. Say you're an NBA player. All right, so all these girls now have access to you, and and not just NBA players, but any high status males. Young women have more access to them now than they ever have. You don't have to go to the same events and stuff to get access to someone who's higher status from you. Speaking of monetarily speaking or whatever it may be, you got lots more options to be connected with people that who never would have been connected with before, and so I think that plays into it to a degree. But Spill the Tea has a chat here.
yeah.
Let me read that real quick, and then I'll hear from you, Tim. It says, I don't even want to date nowadays. I'm single and probably will stay that way. It's a weird world now. Go ahead, Tim.
Um, there's a giant X factor in the fact that you've never online dated though.
True.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's like a giant X factor as far as like it'd be impossible for dudes our age to understand what 22-year-old girls want. And so from an observer perspective, what it really seems to me like is girls of that age are very wild. They want to have a good time, and all the dudes their age, by and large, it may be like 0.5% of them, they're all at home playing video games. And I know maybe that
No,
sounds
that's a point
mean.
too.
Maybe it sounds. I mean, dude, I'm watching it every single weekend. I don't mean to hammer it in there that I'm in bars every weekend, but every single weekend, I see groups of girls that are dressed to the nines, hanging out in large groups by themselves with not a guy inside, because every single one of those guys are either taken, they're at the bar drinking the IPAs with their boyfriend, or they're at home playing some game. And I'm just saying that is a
maybe they're
giant
playing games because they don't have any chance with these girls because these girls want guys with cars and money and
that's
houses.
absolute bullshit, dude. I see guys with nothing. Like both of us could go to the club right now, married, and still get a girl as long as it'd be okay sleeping with their wives. I'm just saying, like it's not. I think there's a giant X factor that's being left out in the fact that older women will meet a gamer dude halfway and think he's just a silly guy and pull him out of that comfort zone. And an older dude will see a group of girls like that and not be intimidated to walk up to one of them and talk. I was saying there's a giant X factor in that, like the poor young Gen Z, like you can't expect them to have not been raised on tablets and YouTube and stuff, and then expect them just to go out there and date without computer apps and stuff. And all of us this age have an unfair advantage.
But you don't think those
people.
younger wild women are swiping left or right or whatever the reject button is on the kids with the the gamer kids with the dating profile in favor of men with status and wealth?
Dude, the girls have money too. They don't need us.
Well, that's the case too. That's true.
Dude, they don't need us anymore. I know that there's a lot of people in this area that still have traditional relationships. I'm not one of them. Like, my wife does not need me. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people I know.
No, yeah, in this
I'm just saying,
generation,
like,
it's a different.
They don't need, like, I mean, and I'm not even saying there's anything wrong with that, but a 22-year-old girl in 2022 looks at a guy and she doesn't see, I wonder if he could take care of me
Right.
necessarily. I mean, maybe around in Clark County, but I really just don't think that's how modern women are looking at men.
Yeah, and then
you know?
I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that's a majority of cases. You do have some. I mean, actually, millennial women have more college degrees, earn more money, and have higher status jobs than men their same age. But at the same time, that also makes those younger men, the millennial men who don't have that thing, that makes them lower status than the women, so they're not going to date down, so to speak. But yeah, I think you're right. It's a lot of factors. But
What do you mean
what's that?
What do you mean they won't date down?
That means
Financially?
they don't have to date down. Or they were gonna a lot of high status women are gonna try to date up. I mean, if you're well established and make a lot of good money, a lot of times they're not gonna date someone their own age who's not in that same world or whatever. But yeah, I don't think it's one easy thing to determine. But I want to get.
I think women are more complicated than we are, and I think that's why it's hard to predict
Well,
who they're going to
you're
be
right about
with.
that.
Like,
I do want to get.
well, like we're, and I think especially Gen Z women are very complicated, and I think that's why it's really hard to predict who they're going to end
I
up
actually
with.
know zero Gen Z women, so I'm just looking from.
Oh, and Gen Z women, but what I've observed, I mean, I think it's simple observation, even with basic psychology, that women are more complicated than
Absolutely.
men. But I think that just in this modern day and era, with this giant like societal growing pains that we're all going through, with the advent of fill in the blank, the world's a crazy place right now. So I mean, just by environmental factors alone, these would be the most complicated, people to kind of deal
Well,
with, men and women.
Well, I really wanted to bring that up to bring up the age difference gap and how it seemed like that was attempting to be normalized at least on that day by the New York Post. And I'm curious why, but
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying there's not a lot of people that don't see the appeal of having a foundation and thing. I think it's less about, maybe it is about money. I don't know. I think it'd be
I
more
think
about
it's status.
experience
It's not
and
money. Money's a part of status, but yeah,
I don't status. I think it might be more about just navigating a very intimidating world. Like I said, like a lot of women they don't need us. So I think a lot of it is survivability, and if you can find a guy that's 20 years older than you, maybe he can show you a couple of
no, I mean that's
pitfalls.
true. It's true.
They
A
maybe
lot of women don't need
but
men nowadays, but they're still it's like a biological, um, psychological drive to seek that. Not that all women do that, but it is a natural thing. So I mean I'm talking in generalities here though, and there's different groups of generalities.
I'm talking about
What's that?
ass. So you're talking in generalities. I'm talking
No,
about ass.
no,
Yeah.
I
I'm
don't
not
think you're
like
talking
always.
about your ass. But let's move on though. Let's
I'm
get on, or we'll never have time to get into the main thing I want to get into tonight. But I got one to show you real quick. Anne Hesh, um, she had a crazy car crash and was put on life support, and eventually they unplugged her. But I wanted to look at this. This is apparently after had um, she had crashed and was being removed from the scene by EMS. Now this says she is trying to get out of the body bag, but this is actually a burn bag apparently. But
And this is the first time we're going to see this
show you
this
this real quick.
victim.
This is Anne Heche being put in the ambulance. They're saying that's a burn bag, but they've got her
It doesn't
apparently
look that
restrained.
good, but
He's
yeah, it
got
does
two
look
straps
terrible.
around her. And then watch this right when they're about to put her in the ambulance.
We'll just see if maybe they're just moving him out of there, or if they put him in an ambulance.
Apparently she crashed into a couple cars and crashed into a house,
that we were
and then the
looking
car
for,
caught on fire.
that anxious or that quick moving
And
that was going on the other
then you
side
see
of the
this
vehicle.
right before she gets
Oh my
in the
gosh,
ambulance.
he's completely alive.
She's trying to get away there.
And this is the first time we're going to see this this victim.
That's strange there, and that's another person. Apparently, she had just done a documentary on chemtrails, and she was also working on a movie about human trafficking, and that it's still apparently going to be released. But then she was taken out, and we also heard rumors when Chester Bennington of Lincoln Park and Chris Cornell that they were apparently working on a similar documentary or something to do with a child trafficking movie, and then they both ended up hanging on a doorknob within a real short time of one another. But I thought that was strange. Anyway, I don't know what's going on there. We'll have to keep watching that. I'm sure we'll hear more about it. I've got a couple more here. We've got Bill Gates donates $13 million to the Atlantic and the Guardian. What do they have to say about meat? Well, let me show you here. And then we've got a whole list of articles about climate-friendly diets and plant-based meat have to be the best carbon investment, and then vegan ethics of a vegan diet, all about the Impossible Burger, the most damaging farm products, organic pasture-fed beef and lamb. And then it's all a bunch of, will we ever stop eating? A whole bunch of stuff coming from these papers on stop eating meat, which just happens to be what Gates is all about while he donates a lot of money to those. So that was pretty interesting. But don't want to stay on that too long either. I got some, speaking of gamer guys, if you're a gamer, I know we were talking about some EA games with Jonathan last week. We got this from Electronic Arts tweet. They tweeted games and then a comma. And then you got somebody down here replied, how much will it cost to unlock the rest of this tweet? Which is a jab at EA putting everything out there and, pay to win and all this extra stuff. They release an unfinished game and then charge you money for the rest of it. I thought that was pretty good. Rare insults on Twitter is pretty fun to follow. And here we go in Democracy Today. We got a school name change for Robert E. Lee Elementary School. And I'm pretty sure this is in Louisiana. And they've got the choices. The top choices: Drew Brees Elementary, Bruce Lee Elementary, John Cena Elementary School, Adolf Hitler School for Friendship and Tolerance, and Schoolie McSchoolface. So, democracy wins again. Did you remember that vote? They had the internet contest a few years ago to see who would win. Do you remember that vote? It was like it was a British agency that had a research ship, and they said they put it out for democracy or whatever, and said we're going to let everybody vote and decide what we call this ship. It's like a $287 million polar research ship, and when they voted on it, the winner was Bodie McBoatface. That was the most popular thing. So I don't know if they.
Did you see?
Do what?
Did you see where they voted for a Pitbull to play a Walmart?
No.
You see that one? And I guess his PR people thought that it would just be a big city, whichever biggest city would automatically win or something. But of course, the internet got involved, and they found, I think it was like some little town in Alaska. Yes, I mean, but like Pitbull was a bro about it. He went out there and they had a good time with it and everything. But it got its origin story because Taylor Swift kept doing online polls and people started trolling her, like do a free concert for a school, and so the internet decided to give her a deaf school.
That's hilarious.
You know what I mean? So, don't do online polls. That's the moral of the story.
All right. Well, let's go on to, this is from Black Flag on Twitter. We had the militia violent extremist stuff, that the leaked memo from the FBI where they were looking at people who used quote of the founding fathers and the imagery of the founding of the nation as signs that someone may be involved in militia violent extremism. Well, they put this out, Black Flag did, the Anarchist Bureau of Investigations, the Law Enforcement Public Violent Extremists. It says the following symbols are used by pro-government or pro-authority violent extremists, specifically government's violent extremists. These symbols are also found in propaganda, online platforms, the corporate press, official documents, government seals, flags, uniforms, badges, identification cards, etc. Widespread use of symbols or quotes from American history, especially in public schools, exist within GVE networks. Historic and contemporary military and police units are common GVE symbols. The use of sharing of these symbols should alone be considered evidence of GVE presence or acceptance, or serve as an indicator of tyrannical activity. And then we've got the FBI here. It says has been a track record of recruiting, radicalizing, training, and equipping normal citizens and entrapping them in terrorist plots. The IRS, the largest organization of thieves, on average they steal around $4 trillion a year, and they're expanding their arms by 2x to target the poor easier. The CIA's fabricated intel that resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans, service members who were sent to unjustified wars of aggression. They've undermined more democratic institutions than the media has ever falsely accused other of. CNN, the cable news network, is one of the lead companies in the corporate press who act as the government's mouthpiece in spreading state propaganda, leading to the deaths of millions. The Federal Reserve, is the largest counterfeit organization on the earth, which prints trillions of dollars a year and gives it out to their friends while devaluing working American savings. Fox News, the Fox News network, plays a vital role in providing the appearance of a free and independent press while pushing the same worse state authoritarianism. Commonly reference historical imagery or quotes such as "Trust the science, intelligent sources say, I voted, and you will own nothing and be happy." So that's our counter there for the Black Flag Company. And then we've got here from Road Bear Life: if taxation is not theft, why are the tax enforcers wearing masks and carrying guns? We've got
the little flag with the bar. I mean, the red and black flag, what is that craziness? At the top of that thing you just read off.
The black and yellow flag? Oh,
yeah,
that's like the ANCAP flag, I guess, or, that's the sign of, a sign that a narco-communists use to, or a narco-capitalists use to identify one another, basically.
So why would you do that? I've always thought me speaking as the old hermit on a hill that's watching you guys group up and go to war. If the FBI keeps grouping people into lists based on what they identify themselves on, based on like a visual symbol, just get rid of all your symbols.
No, you don't do that. You don't.
I mean, you don't have to have that little black and yellow triangle thingy. It just confuses me why that the person that took the time to make that list right there, why use the symbolism? I don't get it. They even list on the thing that symbolism's bad or something. I don't get
what you're saying. They're just making fun of the government list by putting their flag on there instead of the FBI, like on the government memo.
Yeah, I get it.
But the thing is, when they start pointing out things like this is a free country, so no, you don't start hiding your speech, and you don't start hiding whatever you affiliate as because the government says they're going to threaten you over it. No, that's the time that you put more of them up. But let's go on to the IRS video here. 87,000 poorly trained IRS agents coming to a neighborhood near you. I'm going to show you a little video of these guys in action here.
Guns out. Whenever you guys are ready,
Here. Whoops. Look at them flagging one another right off the bat, pointing the guns at one another.
So what's the point in this?
This is some of these new agents they're hiring, practice, and arrests who obviously have no experience in law enforcement or a weapon. And of course, they're just handing them plastic guns, but if you'll notice here...
But doesn't this seem like a job?
Yeah, it could be.
keep it covered. I don't even know. Take your guys off. I'm not saying anything.
They're all pointing their guns at one another, fingers on the trigger.
I'm not saying anything.
Either that or this is a monumental money embezzlement scandal where they just needed to find a way to push a bunch of money into somebody's hands because there's no even point in this training. If you needed to go take people down, they've got enough people in the Fed and the military to go arrest people. You don't need to train these bunch of Look at them. I don't even know what a good word for it is. Gamers.
Yeah, look, finger on the trigger.
You don't
No way to. I mean, some of them are holding across the top of their slides. Nobody knows what they're doing. And then it is training, and they're training. I guess they're training accountants to be criminal investigations unit. Well, Tim, it comes right down to.
I'm calling bullcrap. They'll never send them out.
Well, right here we've got I want to look at a Snopes article. My buddy sent me this. It was a fact check on, is the IRS hiring 87,000 new agents to audit middle class Americans? And I want to look at a couple of key points in this one too, because I want to start off. They say false, straight up false. This claim not partially false or partially true, or whatever. They say false. And then it says the claim misrepresents a 2021 U.S. Treasury Department report estimating that around $80 billion in funding would allow the IRS to incrementally hire nearly 87,000 new employees by 2031. Most of these hires would be replacements for workers retiring from existing positions, not only including IRS enforcement agencies, but also customer service and technology specialists. According to the Treasury Department, audit rates for those owning less than $400,000 in income will not rise. So I want you to remember that. Audit rates will not rise. Okay? We're going to keep going a little bit more. After the Senate passed a sweeping budget in 2022, remember this is after the thing saying, this is a budget report from 2021 saying that $80 billion would allow them to hire that many. Republicans began spreading outlandish claims about the roughly $80 billion of funding allocated to the IRS. So they got the $80 billion that they asked for, and they said it was going to be able to hire 87,000 people. Now, the Republicans say the IRS would be hiring 87,000 new tax agents who would be, quote, coming for average Americans. Let's keep coming down. We've got pictures of tweets from Marco Rubio and Kevin McCarthy, kind of mainstream GOP guys there. And it says, the IRS is not planning to hire 87,000 new tax agents for the purpose of targeting or coming for Americans who earn below a certain income. These exaggerated claims appear to be aimed, at least in part, at capitalizing on partisan anger over the FBI raid on former President Donald Trump. Okay, first of all, people were saying this well before they raided Donald Trump. That came after a few days after this really started gaining traction on the 87,000 new IRS agents. And then we go down here to Snopes says, well, what is the $80 billion actually allocated for? The Inflation Reduction Act would inject much-needed funding into the federal tax agency, which has spent years chronically underfunded, according to Washington Post, with resources to process returns efficiently or assess tax avoidance strategies. Now, their budget, and it says their budget and staffing dropped considerably during that time, and it also says about 50,000 staff members would be eligible for retirement in sometime in the next 5 years. And she told the Washington Post that most of the funding would be focused on mitigating the effects of those losses and hire more customer service and information specialists. Well, here we go. 45.6 billion of the funds would be aimed. Now remember, they said 80 billion. 45.6 is over half of that. Would be aimed at mostly enforcement. What is enforcement, Tim?
I could go two different directions with this.
Well, tell me about them.
Well, I know, like, immediately, if you think enforcement, you're going to go back to that video of all the accountants pretending to use weapons. But, like, couldn't a big part of enforcement be collections? Mm-hmm. You know?
Could be.
How many people, I mean, like, that's the beauty of, beauty of like the Treasury Department stuff. They don't need to get weapons and stuff to come after people. They can just take you to court. You know, they can ruin you without even firing a bullet.
Okay, so thanks for making the point that I was going to make against your initial point. Is even if they don't send these agents out after you armed, it doesn't matter. They'll still take your money, and if you don't give them to them, they'll imprison you. Spill the Tea says. They shouldn't send them out if they're smart, and laughs at it. Yeah, and she also says the fake meat is gross. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed another one. She also said she heard about that, but didn't see it. And yes, R.I.P. Chris and Chester. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. I think, Tim, is probably the thing about the armed IRS agents. They're talking about they're buying like 4,500 ARs. Well, why do you need ARs for IRS agents if they're not going to do some of this stuff? But I think you may be right. It may just be kind of psyop people into trying to pay their taxes to avoid that whole situation. But let's.
Or to get people to defund the Fed.
I don't get that.
You don't understand, like, okay, well, like if people can vote things in a certain direction, if the government wants things going a certain way, all they have to do is keep telling you something, keep telling you that Orange Man bad, keep telling you that Biden's a clown and he's stupid and he's a goofball and he
Why would they
gaffes.
want you to do that? That's what I'm saying, though.
Social engineering.
Well, but why? But what's the goal there when everything that they're trying to accomplish requires a larger bureaucratic state, and they're using the bureaucratic state that they already have to expand it? Why would it? How would it benefit them to cut funding to that?
Because it would be cheaper if you could get people to voluntarily convince the entire body of all people as a whole to just be better as people, because we're moving into self-policing. Right, that's a big theme I know we've talked about, and all the evidence is right there. We're moving into self-policing, and one of the ways you can self-police is make the whole population of people be proud that they're good tax-paying citizens. Because if you're a good tax-paying citizen, you literally don't need the Treasury Enforcement Department if everybody's paying it. You know. Well, I mean, you're going to see. I mean, it's like reverse psychology, whether it's intentional or not. Like, if you want to get rid of
that's the part I say is it's not intentional. I'm not saying it won't have that effect, but I don't think it's intentional at all.
If it's not intentional, then we really are living in a movie then, because I mean, like, a lot of this stuff sure does seem intentional.
I think maybe some of it is, but I think you got a lot of people who are trying to hold on to some sort of power, and the more desperate they get, the stupider they look.
You really think that? I mean, okay, you think people are wanting to hold on to power, and the best way they think to do it is to arm like Dwight Schrute and the rest of the cast of The Office?
I don't think they realize how badly it comes off.
If that's the case you're making, you're going to have to make the case that the entire current voted-in establishment are a bunch of morons that really have no sense whatsoever. There's better ways of taking control than to give this, give Jim Halpert a gun.
Well, I think there's a lot of them that are totally incompetent, and I think there's definitely something to putting this out there, and it could be some sort of psyop, but I don't think it's to get people to, be good people. But let's look at this right here. Remember, we said is that they're not going to increase the audit rates, right? Let me look exactly and get the exact wording of what it says here. Snopes says that they.
I never said they were trying to get people to be good people. It's like we're moving into self-policing, and I think there's a lot of evidence to
that comes from the failure of the state, though. Are you suggesting that the state is failing intentionally?
No, I'm not suggesting why the motivation behind it is. I'm simply suggesting that the entirety of culture right now we're in the early stages of self-policing. That's what I'm suggesting.
Well, I agree with that. My disagreement is that it's being done intentionally. I think it's being done by overreach and a lack of ability.
Self-policing is being done unintentionally.
Yeah,
or
I think it is. Yeah, because the state doesn't like that. The state doesn't. They like to punish people when they do self-policing in a lot of jurisdictions. They like to have the monopoly on that.
You believe in predictive programming? Okay, well, how about the really quick theory that the only reason they did To Catch a Predator is because they knew a bunch of people were going to mimic that, and now you've got 450 million predator catchers online now.
Is that what you think? I don't know that I think that, but I mean, I'm open to the possibility.
No, I don't think that. Right? I think that you should think that. I think it's a little cognitively dissonant to believe in predictive programming and not believe in some of that. But whether regardless or not, Chris Hansen really did inspire a pedophile's
But
nightmare.
I also say I don't think that. See, I don't. It's not that I don't believe in that predictive programming is used. It's like that. Not everything is predictive programming. That some of this stuff is totally accidental. It does. I don't mean to say that these people are evil geniuses. Sometimes they're incompetent, and sometimes they have a lot of unintended consequences for some of the things that they try to do. And I don't believe for a second that they don't actually think that that this is not going to try to, that people aren't going to be worried. I think they think people would be more intimidated by the fact.
I'm sticking to my that they just want to sell
Yeah,
guns.
well,
And they
you
don't
could be on
care. They
something
want to say,
that too, but I really don't think a lot of them want us to have guns. But I think, like again, I think I don't think the individual people invested in like these individual Democrat Congress people who try to pass all these gun laws. I don't doubt that they are invested in gun companies at some
it's
point.
fear tactics.
But I also don't think they want us
It's
to
fear
have them.
tactics. All those people that vote for you not to have guns also have like stock in Lockheed Martin.
Well,
and
that's a lot
DARPA.
different from you
It's
buying
fear
guns.
tactics.
Lockheed Martin and guns are military, equipment. Do they have money in Smith and Wesson and Ruger and Daniel Defense?
Okay, let's say Smith and Wesson then. Let's say Smith and Wesson. That's who they own because they know that every time they put that up on the ballot, that you guys are going to go out there and buy 5,000 rounds of
Well,
ammunition.
that,
That's why I
I
think they do that. It doesn't make any sense why they wouldn't do
I'm not
that.
saying that they don't do that. But I still don't think they want you to have guns. I think they still like to profit off of it. But let's see here, because every chance they get, they put in laws that restrict it. So that would, I mean, that doesn't mean that they won't profit off of it till it's done. But I don't think they want you to have guns. Let's look here at this last thing here that it said on the.
Okay, well, hold on. Like they don't. Well, I guess that's another one. We'll have to talk about that another time.
Yeah, what I wanted to get into here was it would not increase the audit rates of where the hell did that go? I just read it just a minute ago. So I wanted to be sure that I got this right.
How many of these articles that you pulled up tonight do you think that they wanted you to pull up because of Operation Mockingbird?
I don't
know what I'm saying? Like, what are the odds that they showed us Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore and Tim Pool and all these gamer channels, and they wanted all of us to start imitating them? That's what I'm saying. And I mean, that's a possibility. And if they want to do that, I think they do want you to have guns, and I think they want you to buy more of them. They just don't want you to have machine guns and rocket launchers. That's all.
Yeah, again, I think that's a longer discussion, but I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you, and we'll put a bookmark in that and come back to it.
Okay.
So tonight we're looking at the Snopes article that said that they will not be increasing the audit rates, according to Treasury Department. Audit rates for those earning less than $400,000 in actual income will not rise. Audit rates, right? Let's look at the audit rates here from Syracuse University. IRS audits the poorest families at 5 times the rates as everyone else. Lowest income wage earners have 13 audits per 1,000 returns. Everyone else, we're looking at the lowest income wage earners have a higher percentage of audits than the rest of the population. So what is the reason for that, do you reckon? My reckoning is poor people don't have lawyers, and they pretty much just have to pay when that stuff happens. It also is poor people don't have accountants, so when they try to do things like start small businesses, and you have a business that doesn't maybe you only make you're working full time, and then you're running a business, and maybe your business only clears $20,000. You're a prime target for an audit, because what are you going to do other than pay whatever they say you owe it? Meanwhile, if you're a higher earner, you're going to protect your money a lot easier with having accountants and CPAs and having it invested, and probably having the protective things like limited liability corporation, things like this. You're more likely to have that if you have a higher income, and if you do get audited, you're more likely to hire a tax lawyer, and fight back at a higher income. So it's a lot easier to just squeeze the money out of those lower income individuals, but it's not really funding the government, right? I mean, it's just basically giving the IRS agents something to do. So again, I think it's like you said, Tim. I think it is a psyop to keep people paying, because they're not really collecting that much money by running all these audits. They're not really collecting that much money compared to the amount that they actually collect. I mean, most of the taxes are actually paid by the top few percentage of income earners. I think 5% of the top 5% of income earners pay over half the taxes in the country. So why do you think they raid all these, or you audit all these lower income people?
Like, why do I think
Yeah,
they
yeah. What's your
audit
thoughts on
low
it? Why do you
income
think they
people?
go after the low income people when they, even when they collect it all from them, it's still not as much as like just, like I said, 5% of the highest the top 5% of highest income earners pay over half the taxes, and I think it's like the top third pays 99% of the taxes.
Uh, I mean, I guess the obvious answer would be the same reason rich people can do cocaine and people in trailer
Yeah, but
parks can't.
why do you think they go after the people for this is a little I mean,
For the same reason they go after the guy in the trailer park with the cocaine and not the guy with the penthouse with the
okay.
cocaine. It's you maintain a semblance of law by arresting the people who are breaking the law, but at the same time they're not contributing as much to society. So it's like an unspoken rule that we have in society, but we're starting to get rid of it for some reason. We could go into it if you wanted to. It's like people at the top are supposed to get rewarded on a level. So it's almost like we don't mind if the guy that's like the brain surgeon for children or something like that, like he's the only guy in the entire world that can fix a certain kind of spine condition, and maybe he has a cocaine problem at home, or
Yeah.
something like that, or maybe he likes to go to the strip club a little too much, or maybe he has a prostitute problem. It's like we'll forgive that guy because he has a
You
weird
think it's the
itch, a sexual deviant.
utilitarianism that makes us forgive him?
A lot of it is. I think a lot of that is. I mean, like, and I don't necessarily think that's wrong. I just think it goes awry because people get to the top position and instead of taking just a little bit extra cake, they decide they're going to eat half the cake. I think that's. I don't necessarily think it's a bad. I don't think we should be necessarily arresting the guy in the trailer park driving cocaine. I think they should just legalize the
Right.
cocaine. I'm just saying it's the arrangement that we've made as a society. Is if you have more use, or if we like you more, or you do more for everybody as a whole, we're going to let you get away with a
Yeah.
couple more things.
Well, I want to look at one. Oh, go ahead.
As it's high
Yeah.
school rules.
Gotcha.
That's all it is.
Yeah, if you're a good quarterback, you can get away with a lot more. Let's see. I want to look at one more thing here. The 45.6 billion of the funds would be aimed mostly at enforcement, as we said. That's going to be collecting money from people who are mostly poor people, and no, their rate won't increase, but it will still be a lot more audits on the poor people. And it says the Treasury officials say they do not know the exact number of enforcement agencies that will be added to staff. So is that how they're getting through this? 87,000 is false because the Treasury agency, they don't know exactly. So where did the 87,000 come from? Well, they say they're going to replace about 50,000, but in addition, they're also going to be adding 7 to 12,000 people in incrementally per year. So I think that's kind of crazy, but that's just kind of an illustration of when you break down these fact checks from groups like Snopes or PolitiFact, a lot of times they will tell you right to your face that, or they'll phrase the question in such a way, like this one they say are they hiring to audit middle class Americans? And yeah, maybe that's not exactly, but you go right down in there and like, oh yeah, they actually are hiring 87,000 agents, and oh actually yeah, over half the money they spend is going to be on enforcement, and oh actually they do audit the poor more than anybody else, but this is all false. So I just kind of wanted to illustrate kind of how Snopes works there with it's kind of a straw man and it's kind of not. It's like a lot of misdirection, a lot of not answering the questions that are asked and then pretending that you did. So on the last episode, when we were talking, not the last episode, I think it was the last Wednesday night, when we were talking about the militia violent extremists, and you were telling me that, they're not going to be coming after people. Well, because they did come after the president. Well, I want to show you this real quick, Tim, because I think they're sending a definite signal by coming after the former President Trump. And we see that in countries, like I said, like Banana Republic stuff. That's always a sign. You ask the people who've escaped communist dictatorships, and when do they leave? When the people started arresting the opposition government. That's
Going
do what?
so I said, well, when people want to leave communist countries, well, this is where they come, so we
Well, and
can't
that's
go
what I'm
anywhere.
saying,
So
and that's when people leave is when they start arresting the political opposition, because they know historically that's when things are about to get bad, not just for the political opposition but for everybody else. And I got this tweet here from General Michael Hayden. He was the CIA director for Barack Obama, and this is a tweet from Edward G. Lucci, who's a reporter. I forget what paper he works for, but he says, "I've covered extremism and violent ideologies around the world over my career. Have never come across a political force more nihilistic, dangerous, and contemptible than today's Republicans. Nothing close." And General Michael Hayden says, "I agree, and I was the CIA director." So that he's not alone in feeling that way. And this guy who was over supposedly dealing, I don't know how much he was actually working against them, but he was supposedly supposed to be protecting us from ISIS, Al Qaeda, China, Iran, Russia, and all this. But he has this contempt not for them, but for 37% of Americans, which identify as Republicans. And you saw what he did to these guys. We're talking drone bombings and torture and spying and surveillance and all kinds of nasty, stuff that it goes completely against American values. And this guy is saying that Republicans are worse than any of those people. So just think about that when you think they don't want to come after you. I think that's a pretty naive viewpoint. We got Gentleman's Law says,
coming after me.
Spill the Tea says 100% by design. Well, you know what, I mean, I guess if you start putting out art that is like, oh, I love the state, they won't come after you because they're good guys. Yeah, they probably not going to come after you. But if you're a free thinker like you, I know you are, it's dangerous to have guys like you out there eventually. I mean, it's not like they come right out and start arresting you right off the bat.
They need both sides. You can't just go after one group. I mean, like Rage Against the Machine is basically like corporate sponsored chaos anarchy metal. Dude, those guys are so bought, it's ridiculous. And yet we go out there and everybody goes out there and does bulls on, they act like it's anarchy, and it's not. Like $400 a ticket and all kinds
Yeah,
of
and you got to be jabbed to go. It's
I
Rage
think
Against the
that-
Machine, but you have to do what the government says to attend their ticket. Um,
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if like maybe they were I think everybody has like a price that they're willing to pay, and I'm not suggesting it has to be the Illuminati or the government, but like there was I think it was a VH1's Behind the Music with Green Day when he said at one point in time they were just an underground punk band and they had a following, and they had labels coming after them, making them try to make deals with them because they were doing well enough to where people wanted to sign them, especially with the success of like Nirvana and stuff. They wanted something poppier. That's what they were looking for. And the way they ended up getting Billy Joel was the guy from the record company came to him and said that he needed to think about the idea that if he ever wanted a family, that this would be the only way that he would ever be able to do it, was to go with a bigger company, was go with a record company like this. And that's why Billy Joel essentially signed with a big record company, was because he said that he wanted to be a musician for a living, but he did want all those perks of having a family and stuff. And I think that's like what Patrice O'Neal, the comedian, called golden
Yeah.
handcuffs. It's like once they give you something that you can never let go of, they've got you. You voluntarily put yourself in a position that you can never let go of. And I'm not suggesting, I guess maybe I do have to start chaining myself to a few ideas, or I'm going to sound like I don't have any beliefs, which I don't. But like, don't you think maybe they went to Green Day and said, "Hey, buddy, we need you to write a real good song that trashes the Bush administration, so we can get these two parties fighting, so we can do some real bad shit and people not notice it."
I don't know about that. I think it's possible. I mean, I think sentiment was pretty strong against Bush, and they might have had something to do that. But again, that's not the point. The point is, back then, just like when the Bush administration was in charge, and they had some really bad people doing some really bad things, they did go after people who spoke out against them, and they did put in a giant police state. And now you've got basically the opposition to that has now gained control of that, and they are supporting using it against the other half of the country. So it's kind of like the right set it up thinking it would only be used on terrorists, right? And some of us are out here telling the right, no, this is going to be, even if you believe in this stuff, you let the other guys get in charge of it and think of the power they have over you. So now they are in charge of it, and they're declaring their intent to come after not just the right, but especially the right, but anyone who basically is against their progress. So I think that it has to be taken seriously, and I don't think we can just say, oh well, I'm not doing anything wrong, so they're not going to come after me. Like, well, they may not come after you personally, but they still, right now you have to, take off your underwear to get on an airplane. Not literally, but you know what I mean. You got to get felt up. And so that's stuff that would never happen in America too. That's already a big enough violation of rights. So you don't think they will go further?
Uh, yes, but it's not really violating your rights. You don't have to fly.
Well, that's true, but you're also it's government
So
mandated too. You do have the right to travel, and
did that. We did that though. That's why I have a hard time with people when they start complaining about TSA. We did that. Like, we all stood in fear when the towers fell. Well, I didn't. I was too young, but we all watched all of our parents and grandparents all stumble around in fear over terrorists and Islamophobia, that we all let them put metal detectors at every corner of the world. And now, in order to get on an airplane, you better not have shoes on because there could be a shoe bomb. And we're going to have to yank out every seventh person, regardless of if it's a guy in an iron lung or an infant,
yeah,
to
and
check
that's
them
the
for
state
bombs.
filling up
And
you
so
and
we've
your filling up you and your wife when you go through there, though. And you think, I mean,
yeah, we really did that. We did
we
that.
no, we didn't do
And so
that.
if
That
yes,
the
they
political
absolutely
class
said
that did that.
we're afraid of them, but we let them do it, man. We let them do it. I remember that political environment where everybody was a flat. It's like on Hollywood, every villain was a dude with a turban
Yeah.
shouting "Bim Salabim," and we were so afraid that another airplane was going to blow up that we allowed such an air of fear that the populace, maybe not me and you, but the populace did allow them to create such a security state that now you have a TSA that is very overbearing, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you just
Well, and
stop
it's not,
flying.
but it's
And
not
if you
even
just
flying.
stop
That was
flying,
just an example. I mean, the FBI, the feds, the CIA, even the local law enforcement can access.
yep, step,
They can
step,
yeah, that was an example. But I mean, they can all access your phone records, your location, your internet history. All they have to do is get a little sign off on it, and it's not even technically a warrant, and they can look into you. So if we've let it go so far, so to think that they're eventually not going to start doing the pre-crime kind of thing. They're arresting people for thoughts in other countries. If you don't think that'll come here, I don't know, man. I think it's something to definitely be concerned about, and especially when they put out the militia violence extremist list talking about regular people to basically demonize you into them seeing a symbol, and that warrants further investigation of you. And then, I think it's definitely something to be looked at. But it's 11:27. Spill the Tea says they played that footage every minute of every day to traumatize people for months. Yeah, they did. I will say I was at my work when that happened. Nobody ever watched news, and then when that happened, the thing was on CNN, Fox News constantly. That's what really got us addicted into this 24-hour news cycle. And then now eventually you've got it where, you know, politics is becoming pop
well,
culture to a lot of degrees, and you've got so many people um, involved that don't know what the hell they're talking about, that they can basically count on to do things like fill out a mail-in vote thing for Joe Biden. Um, I don't know, man. I don't have a lot of faith in democracy because I see the fruits of it. But anyway, we've got Michael Hayden here talking about how uh, that he believes that the Republicans are worse than any of the groups he ever dealt with as CIA director, and a lot of his friends are still in the CIA. They're still at the FBI and still in the national security state. Spill the Tea says it's so dumb, can't stand it. Yep. But hey, it's 11:30, and I've rambled about enough. Tim, I'll let you, since I kept cutting you off there, I'll let you have the last word here, and we'll get back together on Sunday.
Uh, all male ducks are rapists. That's the way evolution works. The female duck has decided that the biggest, baddest duck gets to procreate with her. And so when a male duck approaches her, she will kick the shit out of him. She will make him absolutely fight for her life to get that sweet, sweet duck tang. And once
See us, Bill.
multiple ducks will be fought, like bunches of ducks at a time, until one duck finally gets it. And so I don't know if all male ducks are rapists or if female ducks are just absolute queens who are not going to stand no puss. No beta male is getting this duck. I think we should, instead of saying all male ducks are rapists, we should start praising female ducks for thinking so much about their young and being such great duck women to say, I am not allowing no scrub. A scrub is not getting no duck love. And yeah, long live queen ducks. They seem like real kick-ass
Well, there you
ladies.
have it. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you Sunday night. See you, Bill.